In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Dark Shadows, the horror collection, continues with The Lucifer Gambit, released in August of 2013, written by Eric Wallace, directed by David Darlington and Darren Gross. The Lucifer Gambit stars Stephanie Eileen? I've only ever seen it written, so I don't know how to say it, as Amy Jennings, Simon Lee Phillips as Dominic Randall, and Sheila Stafel as Isabel Randall. As always, I will be discussing spoilers, so if you'd like to hear the story for yourself first, included in the description below are links to Big Finish's website where you can buy the Lucifer Gambit, or you can buy the Horror Collection bundle. And I would say, starting off, I think this story is the weakest story in the collection. And I don't mean that as an insult or anything, because like I said in my final judgment review, every story in this set would get somewhere between an 8 or to a 10 out of 10. And it's just, this is one of the most straightforward stories, and I don't know why I find it the weakest. Again, it might just be a personal preference thing. So let's just go into the recap and the review. This story opens off really good with a nightmare Amy is having. So let me pause for a moment to talk a little bit about Amy Jennings. Amy is a far, far, far distant cousin of the Collins family, and she is actually a descendant of Quentin Collins. And she had two brothers, one named Tom, one named Chris, and they both died. Chris is the big one. Chris gets mentioned a lot in this story, as well as the next two. So what happened? As descendants of Quentin Collins, all of his, well, no, I don't know how to phrase that, excuse me. Anyway, well, here we go. All of Quentin Collins was a werewolf, and one of his many curses is all of his male descendants are cursed to be werewolves as well. That's why in Bloodlust and Bloodline, Amy's son, whose name I'm forgetting, it's not Harry, Harry's her stepson, it's her younger son, is a werewolf. Anyway, Tom isn't brought up a lot, but Chris will be brought up a lot in these few stories. Chris was marrying a woman named Sabrina Stewart, and he died on their wedding night. And that's all I'm going to say on the matter right now. When, 2 stories from now, when we review Carriage of the Damned, Sabrina is the main character of that story, so I will talk about Chris a lot more there. Anyway, as I was saying, after Chris died, Amy sort of left town. She was inconsolable, she couldn't handle it, so she left. Now, many years later, as an adult, by the way, the next 3 stories are also set before Bloodlust, and it kind of, the Carriage of the Damned will kind of tie into the events of Bloodlust, too. And, wow, I'm going on a lot of tangents yet. Anyway, in her adult life, Amy is going to college at Salem University, along with Carolyn Stoddard, and she is being trained, she's being tutored in parapsychology by T. Elliot Stokes, and she's kind of become his apprentice. So that's the backstory. That's where Amy is starting the story. And this story opens with a really disturbing nightmare. It's this twisted, satanic version of Chris and Sabrina's wedding prior to his death. And even though it doesn't tie anything into the plot, and it ties into the plot in no way whatsoever, this nightmare is I don't have a problem with it because this nightmare is really good. It is so disturbing. But anyway, while Amy has woken up from it and is recovering with Carolyn, she gets a call from someone looking for Stokes. Now, at this time, Stokes is traveling the world with Barnabas and Julia, which will also tie into a later story. Stokes is traveling with Barnabas and Julia, but he left the number for Collinwood as a place he can reach. And Amy, figuring she needs to get away and clear her head, decides to respond to this cry for help. The cry came from a man named Dominic Randall. He was married to this he was the trophy husband to this older businesswoman named Isabel Randall. Isabel died, and now her ghost is haunting Dominic. And so Amy decides she is going to go to Dominic's mansion and stop this from going on. And one of my issues with this story is what exactly Isabel isn't really used the best. She is a ghost first and foremost, but she's able to conjure up these black flames, which, as you can see on the cover here. But, that, aside from Isabel's initial introduction, does not play into the story at all. And it's like, why go to the trouble of addressing that? Why go to the trouble of making a point about that if you're not going to use it? Like, the closest we get about Isabel essentially being a fire spirit of some sort is that she cannot go where there is no light. The light is what conjures her. It's what allows her to manifest. But just beyond that, her ability to conjure flames plays no role in the story. Anyway, after her initial meeting with Isabel, Amy meets Dominic, Isabel's husband, and Dominic is really freaking creepy. Like, as soon as they meet, Dominic starts hitting on her, which, in and of itself is creepy. Your wife just died, and now you're hitting on this girl you just met 30 seconds ago. But the way he hits on her is disturbing, too. Anyway, as they continue to investigate, and Amy tries to figure out how to release Isabel from her ghostly bond, we start getting the hint that Dominic was the one who killed Isabel. You see this in a lot of ghost stories. The misdirect. Oh, I'm a ghost because the person you're helping killed me. And then we get kind of the twist in the climax. I'm going over this one really fast because I feel like I spent a lot of time on the backstory. Because we get that misdirect, and then we get the twist. Yes, Dominic killed Isabel, but Isabel's not an innocent party. They're both really terrible people. And that's one thing I do like about this story. There is a lot of humor to it, and it's mixed into the story really, really well. None of the humorous bits feel jarring or out of place. I do have to say one thing. I do think the ending, and in fact, that's why Dominic was looking for Stokes, not to help him. Well, yes, to help him, but not in that way. Essentially, it's I'm going to use the blood of an innocent and sacrifice them to get rid of this ghost. And if I did have any other issues with this story, aside from the plot point that's dropped as soon as it's introduced, it's that Stephanie Allin's acting here is a little weak. It feels really forced. Like, both Isabel and Dominic, as a way of taunting her and trying to intimidate and demoralize her, call her a child. And she sort of, the way she responds, she's panting very heavily. She's pausing between words. I am not a child. It doesn't feel real. It feels really forced. It feels very acting. But it's only in those moments. And I would say the climax is a little too happy. Not that there's nothing wrong with a happy ending. There's not. But it's just a little too cheery. Basically, Amy is able to get Dominic and Isabel to resolve their differences. And they find a way for Isabel to pass on. And it's just the way it's done. It feels like it's resolved just a little too neatly. And I think of most of the stories, I think all of my small nitpicky issues add up. And, talking about this, I think talking about this story now, I think it's just that all of the small nitpicky issues I have with this story just add up, which kind of makes this the weakest one in the set. Again, Still a solid 8 out of 10. The Lucifer Gambit, if nothing else, is a lot of fun, and it introduces some great plot lines that will carry over into the next stories. Speaking of, join me next week when Amy's story is not done and she finds herself back in Collinwood dealing with the happier dead. But what are your thoughts on the Lucifer Gambit? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi where you can support the channel. And you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.